What's up, friends? My name's Georgie, the warmest of welcomes to the Just Breathe podcast, where I'll be talking all things breathing to help empower you guys to use the power of your breath to harness your bodies and minds. In today's episode, I'll be chatting with the goddess of a woman that is Anastasia Hatzivassiliou. Anastasia is CEO and founder of Super Able Mind, a humanistic and scientific approach to therapy that focuses on peak performance and brain optimization. Anastasia is also my personal therapist and someone I owe a great deal to for helping me and guiding me in my personal journey of growth. Anastasia was generous enough to share her personal journey with me and how she came to create Super Able Mind, as well as why cultivating a strong mindset is key when it comes to growth. It was such an incredibly empowering and insightful conversation, and I hope you walk away with as many insights as I did. If you haven't already, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the Just Breathe podcast. Let's keep on building that strong breathing community. The more people talking about breathing, the better. All right, let's dive right into this incredibly powerful conversation. I really hope you enjoy it. This is episode 24 of Just Breathe with Anastasia Hatzivassiliou. Hey Anastasia, how's it going?
It's a good morning and I get to see you.
I know, it's a beautiful time. It is. Thank you so much for jumping on to the Just Breathe podcast. It's a massive pleasure to be chatting to you and to hear about your journey. Of course, I have been through your incredible course of therapy. But I don't know if I know that much in detail about your journey. So I'm actually really excited to hear about how you created this incredible modality of SAM learning.
The story.
The story. Your story this time.
Itself, right? Because remember our module number 2, the stories that we tell about the people, the event, or ourselves will determine how we feel, what chemistry we make in the physical body, in the biology.
Yeah.
And whether we're adaptive or not, or well or not, or processing or not. And it's always nice to review what story we've kind of created about ourselves at different stages of our development. So my story age 16 is not the story age 54.
Yes.
It's very different. So shall I tell you the story age 54?
yeah, for sure. I mean, perhaps you'd even tell a different story saying that, even if you told it last week, because we're constantly shifting and changing, right?
That's a fact. That's a fact on the back of our experiences. Any new experience we have, any fresh, novel, diverse experience enables us to adjust the filters of our perception. Yeah. And then as a consequence of that, we're seeing the picture of ourselves or other people, in according to that. We're constantly aligning ourselves with each new experience. Or some of us do. Some of us kind of wing the creative process.
Yeah.
Again, it's about what information you've been absorbing for most of your life.
And
how to use that data. And of course, in the age of information and how we absorb so much data from social networks, social media, the way that we use the internet, we're constantly foraging for information.
Yeah.
We're actually quite thirsty for it, or we've become conditioned to receiving it or to hunting for it, that we have the opportunity to frequently change our perspective.
Yeah, and that's really almost against the sort of British way of being, isn't it? So much of British culture, especially, and many other parts of the Western world, but particularly British, is stuck in that's the way it is, you know, that it that's just how it is, and it's really not true, is it, actually?
There's a lot. When I first came here 22 years ago, almost 23 years ago, in 1997, I had to make adjustments.
Yeah.
You know, so I was always quite, you know, coming from Australia, you know, quite optimistic, positive, what's going to happen next?
Yeah.
You know, and you know, and for me, one of the phrases that I became familiar with quite early was nightmare day. Oh, nightmare. Why is everyone constantly referencing their day as a nightmare? Get that. And then a few people would say to me, well, you know, maybe you need to tone it down a little bit. I said, tone what? You know, maybe, you know, a little bit less, you know, passion would be good for you in your profession. And I said, oh, okay. You know, and of course I was, you know, thirsty for any information that would enable me to transition from one culture to another. But the beauty of the UK is really that there are so many cultures.
There are.
Consequence, you know, you can be Greek, you can be Italian, you can be Asian, you can be Black, you can be, you know, whatever. And because of this melting pot, you know, we've developed a tolerance. And we learn from others in that way. Whereas in Australia, you know, although it's supposedly a melting pot, I think, you know, most Australians refer themselves, or all Australians refer to themselves to Australian, you know, perhaps, maybe I'm generalizing, but I'm definitely Greek, Australian, English.
Right. That's a cool little cake that you've got there. A cool little mix of ingredients.
And I've learned so much here. I've learned so much in the UK.
Yeah. I'm sure. I mean, there's so much to learn from so many different sort of colorful influxes of cultures. You're right. But we've sort of got onto your story. So you arrived in England from Australia in 97, and then what happened then?
It was Christmas. It was a complete change of weather from hot summer to snow and wind, and it was something like -3 at the airport.
Fantastic.
And I didn't have gloves or a scarf because I've never had them in Australia. And then I got to Connaught Mansions, you know, on the 5th floor, and the landlord was away in Aruba.
Oh, right.
And there was a note saying, lodger, welcome, I'm not here, make yourself at home, you know, and I'll see you when I get back. And so I looked out the window on the 5th floor and there were pirouetting snowflakes. I remember this very well. And then I wrote the poem, Pirouetting Snowflakes. And it was, you know, it was the beginning of something very, very different. But I left Australia in pursuit of adventure, a new career. My degrees are not in neuroscience or neuropsychology. They're fields that I've studied in the 3 decades, in the past 3 decades of my life. But my degrees are in literature and American history and education.
Right.
So in my 20s, I taught at the school that I went to, and I loved it. You know, my peers were my teachers. They were surprised to see me again in the format of a teacher asking for a job. But, you know, those years began, you know, my interest in the teenage brain, and I wanted to know, well, how does that teenage brain work? What's going on? Is it different from the adult brain? And of course, that led to a huge Pandora's box. And in my 20s, I began studies in psychology and evolutionary biology. I dabbled in there. I would look up what the curriculum was at the universities, and then I would choose areas that were of interest to me and were relevant to the teenage brain.
Yeah.
Then in my 30s, I went the course of spirituality, and I wanted to understand my mother's faith.
Right.
I wasn't a believer of God, but I wanted to know, when she picked up that Bible in a moment of stress or after an argument with my father, I thought, whatever happens in the 20 minutes that she sits, something happens, and there is almost a transcendence, a transformation, almost a new connection. You know, that when she got up from this, you know, really the face was not the face that you know, that I saw when she sat down. And one day I remember asking her, I said, Mum, what's in the book? And she goes, oh, I just hope that one day you love God as much as I do. But Dad was an atheist, and I was more inclined to favor his ways, his charisma, his passion. You know, he was quite conflict, you know, riddled. And of course that made him very interesting. And he was very handsome. You know, when I was young, he was incredibly handsome. So I just found him very, very interesting.
Yeah.
Very problematic as well, because he was really a very troubled orphan and was bullied and had tremendous anger problems and depression issues. He was never diagnosed, but I'm sure he was clinically depressed. So he was far more interesting than my mother.
Right.
But so I would say, no, Mum, I'm atheist. I'm like, Dad, I don't believe in God. And she would cringe. But in my 30s, I knew there was something, take God out of the picture, and what do you have? So for
Something
me,
bigger than yourself. Yeah.
yeah. And for me, it was I believed in creation. I believed in the source that we came from, whatever that was, the field or the 0 point field, as some might call it. That place that we came from nothing. So I believed in that creative energy and that space. So I thought, well, I'm going to learn how to meditate, and I'm going to sit, and I'm going to source my source.
Mm-hmm.
So I began studies in Buddhism and Zen and Sufism and the Tao.
Yeah.
I was always an avid writer. So, I began writing poetry at the age of 13. I began writing philosophy. And then I found that decade of my life, very enriching. But being, the kid that always wanted to know how something worked.
Yeah.
I wanted to know, well, if I sit in a state of meditation for 3 hours and I have altered states of consciousness and I really have psychedelic highs, I want to know what that looks like on a subatomic particle level.
Yeah.
I want to know how the electrons and the particles and the protons moving.
Yeah, what's going on?
What's going on, So in 2008, they began a decade of going into quantum science, epigenetics, neuropsychology, neurobiology. And that was, a lovely rabbit hole.
Mm-hmm.
And then I understood, why it was important to sit and meditate, or to be mindful, or to adopt non-reactive, humanistic, altruistic thought processes that then provoke that central nervous system and that brain to behave in a specific way, which was more calming, right? And that always feels lovely.
Yes, your mother's praying made sense.
It did.
Yeah.
It did. So, I had the two options. Was I going to be like Dad, argumentative, conflict-riddled, always judgmental of everyone and everything? Or was I going to be like my mother, who, if there was gossip in the room, she'd show incredible discomfort, and then she'd cough, and then she'd say, oh, they're not here at the moment, I feel a little bit uncomfortable. And if they persevered, she would get up and leave the room and then return when it was finished.
Right.
So I just had tremendous respect and admiration for the quality of her relationships and how she maintained them.
Yeah.
The way that she brought out the best in my father. Yeah. For the way that she was able to manage, her children and to support them. And she was incredibly non-judgmental. So I guess, 9 years ago, on the back of what science I had learned and explored, and what I knew about how the brain worked and how it triggered the nervous system to work in specific ways.
Yeah.
In 2013, I thought, well, if I could create, the ideal mindset, the perfect mind, because I know it's possible, we have plasticity, and we can harness the plasticity of the brain to make involuntary or automatic behaviors which do serve our biology, our chemistry, our physics. So I thought, okay, so what does it look like? I thought, well, it has to be non-judgmental, because that's what creates calm and tranquility and nurtures equanimity.
Mm-hmm. So,
well, it has to kind of be able to go outside and look at life and not condemn life.
Yeah.
Because then it enhances a greater, the quality of our human connection. And we don't get to learn everything that's relevant to survival without another human or a plethora of humans, and the diversity of humans. The more diverse the people that we learn from, then we have more knowledge, more data, more adaptability, more flexibility, and the ability to actually shape the kind of relationships we want to have, towards more meaningful, less conflict-driven, less fuss and drama, and more kind of, I like to say, respect, support, and allow. I respect you, I support you, I allow you. Doesn't mean I agree with you, but I'm listening. Tell me more.
Yeah.
And that creates a different chemistry in the physical body.
Yeah.
So I had this idea of what the perfect mindset looked like that would inspire a specific chemistry, a specific biology. And then I thought, okay, non-reactive, emotional intelligence had to be high, cognitive ability had to be also important. The ability to recall information, to the ability to focus, to concentrate, to be attentive, the ability to just stay and watch and observe and be curious.
Yeah, to divulge into those details.
Yeah. So it required for us to be more open and willing to be expansive rather than constrictive. And again, when the brain and the nervous system are taking in data, ideas, thoughts, responses, or learning responses that create a more open, mindset, but also an open body, an open heart, willing to observe, to watch, willing to learn, then that was a happier mindset, a more adaptable, flexible. For me, the definition of intelligence is, adaptability. Can we adapt? Can we adapt to the forever changing circumstances, in our environment and in our relationships as well? Yeah. So, and then I thought, well, I would have to test cognitive ability. I would have to, if I was my first guinea pig, and I would have to create a baseline.
Yeah.
Therefore, well, how can I test my problem solving, my focus, my attention? So I thought, well, I need an app, I thought. So I thought, oh, what is out there? And I researched and I thought, well, Lumosity is the most basic. And, I researched the people that were involved in creating it. And I thought, okay, this serves me for now.
Right.
Later on, I switched to Brain HQ that was discovered by Michael Mercenetcher, who's an incredible, we call him the godfather of brain plasticity.
Right.
And then but when I was on Lumosity, I was able to create a baseline of cognitive performance. And then I was able to train my brain, my mind 3 times a day for about, 40 minutes to see how quickly I could improve in these different areas. And then, of course, I thought, well, how could I test this in my real life? Am I more focused throughout the day? Am I more present? Am I more grounded? Am I less reactive? Am I a better problem solver? How do I see my environment? How am I measuring the things in my environment as a consequence of working on my problem solving, which required mathematical kind of development or conditioning? I did notice, that the more focused I became, the more attentive I became, the more balanced that I felt. In other words, not distracted, not interrupted, but really present. The processing part of my brain was, being refined, was working really well, and it was a different experience.
Yeah.
So on the back of, after 4 months of seeing the effect on me, on my mindset, on my mentality, which really was a shift because, my history is elite sport.
Yeah.
So, and me, I was the adrenaline junkie. I would exercise every day. Every morning I would ride my bike to Tower Hill and back to the King's Road. Then I would do a run, plyometrics, skipping. I was really an adrenaline, an endorphins junkie. Mm-hmm. So, and my mindset really reflected that, and that makes sense,
Right.
But this almost, it went there. It kind of, it tipped it to there. There was just consistently more calm, consistently more groundedness.
Yeah.
And then I thought, well, of course this makes sense. I've just wired my brain to a series of responses that become involuntary. And now I've developed, now I'm truly more present, and then
balance.
Yeah. But what I did do, I have to say, is that I stopped meditating when I first began to develop this idea, because I knew that meditation did affect my mindset. So I thought I wanted to eliminate all variables, any influences.
Right.
So I stopped meditating at that point, 2013.
Right.
So this happened, this shift of mindset, that not only, for example, with meditation, I would meditate, I would sit, and then I would get up, and then throughout the day, you'd start to kind of race and pace, and then the tempo of the day would change. That was completely opposite to what you experience in meditation.
Yeah.
But with this training, that was different in that, my energy would be like, like that for most of the day. I would be able to maintain that energy because my mindset was different. The ideas that I had absorbed or learned as a consequence of training my mind on this platform, my mindset had changed and my energy had changed because the chemicals that were running through my body, the body chemistry had changed. And for me, that makes sense. And so then I thought, okay, I've got something here. I'd like 8 people to test this on. And I was already a coach and a mentor.
Right.
So I offered the 3-month, 12-lesson course to 8 specific people. And one of them was the manager of an elite athlete who was also an elite athlete. His daughter who had some obsessive compulsive disorder.
Right.
Someone else who had depression, an executive, and a few others.
So a variety of personalities.
Yes, and that was important to me, to test it to all ages and all occupations.
Right.
And the results were amazing, absolutely amazing. And then on the back of that, the company, people were just talking about their experience, and it just mushroomed and it grew.
Yeah.
So what it's become since then is not what it was. There was 2 years of thorough data collection, and also using heart rate variability to monitor the stress of the individual when they were on these cognitive games.
Yeah.
But then I thought, well, we don't need the apps anymore. A series of ideas had been developed. Now they were specific.
Yeah.
Like non-judgment. Cool, calm, and connected, present, focused, and attentive.
Yeah.
When the client or the patient attempted to be these ideas in the platform of their real world, i.e. in how they communicate and engage and interact with their real world, they were learning these ideas anyway. They were forming new connections, new neural pathways, new neural circuitry. So they were learning these ideas in their real world. So then the process was modified, refined. It continued to be refined, and now we teach 9 modules of work, and we teach what I call the SAM knowledge, which in essence is a series of ideas, responses that we rewire the brain to these ideas, responses, and then we're cultivating a non-reactive, humanistic level of mind, which then triggers the central nervous system and the brain to respond in specific ways. After a 3-month period, they become our new normal, our involuntary responses. And of course, you've had the experience of this. So maybe you can share what you experienced during the course, maybe.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I mean, so much resonated from everything you've just said. Too much. It would be a 6-hour episode of that. I think one of the biggest things for me was that when I came to you, I strongly believed that I was turning to a therapist because I had a problem. And quite quickly, you showed me that there was no problem to fix. There was nothing to fix. And that we were so taking that judgment away straight away, which made me look at the idea of therapy and self-development and self-growth completely differently. Because I mean, contrary maybe to what I even would have said myself before, but I really do think I was in the mindset that to work on oneself was only really necessary if you had a problem or if something was wrong. Coming from the idea that nothing was wrong meant that infinite growth was possible. And that was an incredible concept. Now, the concept you talked about of emotional intelligence, and it's really interesting that you talked about measuring heart rate variability, because that, of course, has so much to do with breathing, that we can sort of, take control of our own adaptiveness in dealing with stressful situations. That was massive for me in being able to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, which I know is one of your main concepts. And that was a huge thing for me to learn to stay. And again, not to solve the problem, to sit in the problem,
to observe the problem.
And to be curious.
Or to observe the sensations. We said there's nothing to fix, but everything to learn. In order to have the curiosity of a young child, even if it's painful, you have to say, what is this? What's this feeling, and where is this feeling? Where does that come from? Curiosity rather than judgment. And so in that moment, between an event, an idea, a painful event, and your response to that idea, I need to go and run, or
Yeah.
I'm going to do this, or I'm going to cook, which is a deflection from the feeling.
Yeah.
And avoiding the feeling, we say, breathe in to the feeling and lean into the feeling.
Yeah.
And so, you have an event, painful, your response is here in between, because, we're a human and we have the ability to pause.
Yeah.
That pause is so important, in that if we're prepared to pause and to sit, that feeling, that pain, that call it envy, jealousy, fear, shame, guilt, if you sit with it, it has to dissipate, because the stress chemicals of cortisol and adrenaline will dissipate after 90 seconds, unless you're running the same story and the same loop.
Yeah.
So feeding the same story, feeding the same chemistry, getting the same outcome, doing it over and over again, then your body is becoming, is encoding the chemistry of that, and it's becoming that. This is a learning, thinking body. This is a learning feeling body.
Yeah.
The physical, our character, is encoded. Our history, our chemistry is encoded in the physicality of this body. So to sit and say, well, what is this? Number 16, blues, awareness is empowering.
Yeah.
What is this? It's still painful. Yes, it is.
Mm-hmm.
This is wretched. Yes, it is. Validation. Mm-hmm. I feel you. And I always say, in that moment, when a friend comes to you with a problem, we always give to them warmth and tenderness and affection and validation. But learning to do it to ourselves, that's difficult.
Yeah.
Why? Well, because the chemistry, we're swimming in the chemistry of that, and they're not. So, but can we learn to sit with it? Yes.
Yeah. And sitting with it was enormous for me, and that awareness as well of what story I was telling myself. And actually, so many, of course, as you know, enormous realizations about myself that were profound and had a profound change and impact on my whole perception of reality, actually. But the story I was telling myself, I think, for most of my adult life, was that I was living my life as an equation. Even approaching therapy for the first time, I was holding a judgment on it, that if I have 12 sessions for 3 months, I will get this, probably. If I was living so many parts of my life in this way, that if I do this and get this and achieve this, then I will get this, and then I will be happy. And so pushing, trying, working more. The more I can do, the more I'll get, right? Because that's the equation in my mind. And I had no idea that I was literally running myself to a point of clinical burnout, emotionally, physically, spiritually, in every way possible, to try and achieve this thing that I still have no idea. I couldn't even put it into words and articulate exactly what it was, but just achieve being enough for the world, and being enough for everyone that I loved and held dear, through no fault of their own, but just trying to, which is, of course, explains completely the whole reason I became a performer, to begin with, to show the world that I was big enough and I was good enough, and I could stand on that stage and be everything everyone wanted me to be, without actually stopping and asking, well, what do I actually want to be, rather than what I think the world wants me to be, what I think I should be. And then the more you become aware, the more empowered you become to ask all those questions of what actually do I want? Is this serving me? Is this story serving me? And I think what I mainly hugely realized very early on is that I never used to be happy. And I'm sure we'll get on to, we had a long conversation, of course, about what defines even happiness. What is happy, which we'll get on to in a moment. But I think I really discovered that I wasn't happy, I was positive. The sunshine was shining out of my ass. I was so positive. I was, it didn't matter if the house behind me was burning.
Remember when I said to you, Georgie, one day, I said, well, Georgie, I said, have you noticed? I said, you never bring misery into a room, do you? Right? You're just not that person. I can't imagine you bringing misery into a room.
No.
right? And then 10 seconds later, tears.
Yeah.
Right.
Sobbing.
Yeah. But, I'd like to add, I think, isn't this the endeavors of most, 21 or 24, or 23 or 26-year-olds to go and to explore and to experience, and you're thirsty because, your brain hasn't even fully formed yet. The middle prefrontal cortex isn't fully formed. You're supposed to be impulsive. You're supposed to be pushing the boundaries. You're supposed to be making mistakes. You're supposed to be enduring pain.
Yeah.
So, my advice always to young people, is, hey, you're supposed to be feeling like this.
Yeah.
You're supposed to be suffering too.
Yeah.
Right. And just recently I said to a young person, a teenager, I said, the problem with our education system, it hasn't got specific subjects. Right. We should have different classrooms for different emotions, and we should be taught how to sit with our emotions. And the most important classrooms are actually anger, jealousy,
suffering,
shame, envy. Whereas what we tend to do with young people is, why are you feeling this? And then we kind of we don't validate it, but jealousy and envy and suspicion, they're all valid emotions and valid experiences. And unless we're prepared to be honest and say, hey, this is how I feel. I'm really jealous of that person. Are you? Tell me why. And then when we have permission to explore blood, guts, warts, beauty, and all, right, now we can truly learn. And so I wrote down here as you were speaking, the growth is far greater than the pain.
Yeah.
There were moments, and I see this frequently with clients, there's so much pain, there's so much grief, there's so much,
my gosh,
there's so much lament. But in each one of those cases, when the person comes to a stage where they've been able to address their narrative and understand how that narrative has caused them pain, and then to be able to tweak that narrative, or to consider another part of that story they haven't considered yet.
Yeah.
Right. Then the growth on the back of that is far sweeter.
Oh my
far
goodness.
Greater than the pain that was endured during the most horrible, moment. So why is that? So why is that? Well, it's because, the human brain was designed to learn everything relevant to survival. Yeah. They need data that enables life to shift, to make a shift, to have an epiphany, right? To have a new experience. We become that curious child again that's having a blast. And if you've fallen and you've broken your ankle, or you've got that scar, oh yeah, okay, what's next?
Yeah. To welcome that suffering. And I agree. I mean, if you think about when you're a baby, even if a baby cries, the mum goes, shh, shh, shh.
Yeah.
Stop crying. When actually, I wonder what would happen if we said, wail, go stand outside and wail and let it out and see what happens. I don't know.
One of my friends who's a new mother is she gave me this example. She's got a 3-year-old and a 4.5-year-old, but she was describing how, when her daughter was crying, what she does is she goes and she just puts her hand on her chest, and she said, in other words, she's saying, I'm here, cry.
Yeah, cry, but I am
cry,
here.
But I'm here. Yeah. I'm here. Yeah. And that for me makes sense. It's validating, or an emotion validating that experience, whatever it may be, in the life of an 8-month-year-old child or 2-year-old.
Yeah.
Cry. It's okay.
Yeah, I 100% think, we should comfort our children. I don't mean that we should let children suffer, of course, but as in, like you said, validating those feelings that we have labeled as bad feelings, which actually, through my journey with you, I've learned are not bad at all, that there's so much growth in the suffering, which I think is why I was incredibly grateful of your combination of spirituality and science, where the Zen Buddhism came in, and you gave me, of course, some incredible books that gave me incredible comfort. But those books weren't of avoiding any suffering. It was stepping into your suffering and trying to befriend all of those emotions that you'd avoided for so long, which I'd avoided my entire adult life because I had labeled myself as a positive person, as someone who was seen as a bright, sunny, positive person. I was never sad. That wasn't allowed in my sort of repertoire of emotions. It wasn't who I was. Whereas actually, it was the core of who I was and everything I was missing in when I didn't feel fully full, when I was doing some incredible performing jobs and sitting there going, something's missing. So I should probably try this next thing and this next thing and push and do more outside of myself. Go, never pausing to actually just look inward and pause and take the time to actually just sit with what was there rather than seeking anything new. And so I think when I came to you, and I actually had to sit there very uncomfortably and look at what I had, which is, I know one of your cards, what do I have, was extremely uncomfortable, but oh my goodness, incredibly overwhelming, because I was like, there's all this stuff coming up that I have never faced. And it terrifies me. And it really pissed me off at first, because I was like, I can't stand half these things about myself. I don't want to sit with these things, and things that actually now are of great beauty and are incredibly important to my strength as a person. But even that word, right? Strength of strength. My strength as a person before would be the fact that I can take my anger and stress and go for a 20-mile bike ride and just get in there like, and even people would encourage me, that's amazing that you can really just run it out and get it out of your system. But it's avoidance. The real strength, the real strength in the pause.
I don't think that we need to kind of punch the bag for 30 minutes or do the 25-mile bike ride if we were prepared to sit down there and add some warmth and tenderness to whatever it is that we're going through. We've learned to be incredibly hard on ourselves. But that's also part of the human experience. Even I work lots with families and children and teenagers and parents, and I try to teach parents effective communication strategies in raising young children and teenagers. And, the way that we learn not to accept ourselves, and we were only little, and we were always going to read the situation in this way, and parents were always going to behave in that way back then in that generation. So if we were naughty, or if we were frustrated, and if we were problematic in any way and it interfered with the routine of the elders, all we had to do was read the faces of the elders and or hear the tone of their voice. And in that moment, the story that we told was, I'm not good. I'm bad. I'm naughty. And that's how, it created negative self-worth. So, or parents might say, well, go into your room and come back when you're in a better mood. In other words, you don't have the right to feel like this.
Or even the face the wall, the sit on the naughty step. I mean, that still goes on now, of course, but was much more prevalent. So when I was really little, I mean, that was just the standard, right? Stand against a wall or sit on a step, not at all, at the fault or disrespect of any parents. Of course, if you are led to believe that is the thing to do, then you will do it out of love. But you're right, it's another avoidance, right? That we.
It is. And so there's one of the modules that we teach is called, emotions in a bottle. Right. So what happens with a young person in that it's just learning about its feelings as a consequence of its experiences. And it's important that it learns the uncomfortable ones. More importantly, that it learns to sit with its discomfort, its frustration, its sadness. So what happens is if it's sent to a room, if the child is sent to a room or it's removed, then what we're doing is we're actually reinforcing that emotion, that experience. Right. And we're not giving the child to sit through it and work through it and understand itself as a consequence. So what we suppress, or I say that unacknowledged emotion will just create triggers and pressure points in the physicality of the body and form vents and trigger points. And then we're easily hooked or triggered. And we can learn this work as adults. We can learn to validate our own emotions, validate our own insecurities. And you know, and again, it's done with tenderness and warmth and affection, and patience.
Yeah, to even our most vulgar parts of us. I mean, I remember sitting opposite you many times and a lot of like, oh, and oh, I hate that. And, you know, lots of self-deprecating moments of like, God, I can't believe you're right. I am this, but how pathetic and how this. And it was the first thing where you stopped me of no, that's another belief. It's another detriment to yourself, that even the guts and warts of ourselves have great potential and great beauty in them as well. And that was a huge learning curve for me. And an interesting part of me, I think, going to therapy was definitely something where I, as you know, have an innate need, which is something I'm still, God, I'm only on the baby steps of my journey. It's a lifelong journey, but a need to know. I need to know exactly, you know, analytically, logistically, what every single thing meant. And you can't articulate every experience and every feeling of a human being. And that was reflected in my inability actually to pause, to actually give space. That's another one, of course, give space and respect, support, and allow that. And it was a big thing for me to accept that actually I held quite a lot of judgment over other people purely from trying to articulate and understand what they were experiencing, what they were going through, and how that related to how they were communicating with me and how that affected my experience. And to even just begin working with you to give space and to just allow whatever, I mean, especially in terms of relationships, to just allow whatever that other person was experiencing and reflecting towards myself, to allow it to be there, even if it was uncomfortable, to give it space without needing to understand every little bit of it. And of course, this goes for friends, partners, family, co-workers, anyone. When you try to pick every single detail of what everything means, you cut yourself off from any sense of that childlike curiosity that we were saying is so incredibly important. And it's something I'm still working on, but my goodness, that just taking that step to understand the importance of that. As an adult, you don't need to understand every detail of every experience that happens and every bit of someone else, and give everyone a label as to, oh, they are this, they're this. I mean, do you remember I would give people labels of attachment styles and love languages and all and just to be like, they're this. I can put them in that box and done.
Yes, because you had to understand them. Right?
Yeah, so, every detail.
So here's the thing about the non-judgment card. You know, I've created it because what it does is the moment you judge something, and of course it's impossible not to have an opinion on something. The moment you judge something, what you create is a barrier between you and the other person. But every person represents, you know, information that we can learn from. But the moment you judge, you create conflict and drama. As a consequence, you trigger your own central nervous system to go into its survival, you know, mode, its reactive mode, its Stone Age mode. But now the other side of that is the parasympathetic nervous system mode, which is the non-reactive, the responsive, the collaborative, the open and curious part. Now, when we're shifting, and throughout the day we're going through both, back and forth, right? So, but when we're more often than not able to stay cool, calm, and connected, 2 red, present, focused, and attentive, 1 red, softly strong, 41 blue. These calming kind of ideas. Now, what we're doing is we're triggering the middle prefrontal cortex, or what I call the baby genius. And here we have access to 10 tremendous features, but we can only access these kind of features when we're not in a survival kind of reactive, defensive, offensive mode. Because when we are in that mode, we're in survival, right? And we're in battle. And I've got to condemn you or find fault in you. But guess what? That now I've lost the ability to be rational and measured and to sit there and watch and observe. You know, our number 22 blue says, now we're becoming super sensory. In other words, when we are becoming these non-reactive thought processes and responses, now we become super sensitive, the intelligence we were always meant to be, the intelligence that we were designed to be more in the last, let's say, 500,000 years.
Yeah.
So what am I saying is that, these eyes, they're connected to the brain, the ears as well. They feed data to the brain constantly. If I'm in a reactive mode, then I'm really judging what's before me on the back of my own limited experiences, according to my culture, to my upbringing, to my color, to my sex. We all have unconscious biases. We can't avoid them. We have them as a consequence of our experiences. So the moment we say we can shift from judgment or be aware, I'm in judgment now, well, let me shift to observation.
Yeah.
Let me just watch.
Yeah.
Let me not judge. Let me explore. Let me be curious. Let me ask questions.
Yeah.
And then we can go into discernment. So from judgment to observation to discernment. So in essence, if we are adopting the language of the knowledge, non-reactive, non-judgmental, observing, watching, insightful, inquisitive, curious, now we're really, able to engage with our external environment in such a way that we feel okay, that we feel well, that we're enthused rather than, trepidation. What's going to happen next? What are they going to do to me?
Yeah.
But to understand that is, conflict and drama, which is our number 19, no fuss, no drama.
Yeah.
The whole design of this brain is for diversity. There are no two people on this planet that are alike, not even identical twins.
Right.
So as a consequence of that diversity, then it's going to be impossible for us not to have ambiguity or lies or deception or hypocrisy, any of that. Mm-hmm. So if we can just say, okay, this is going to happen in my relationship. It's going to happen at work. It's going to happen with my children. Mm-hmm. Right? It's going to happen with my clients, because we don't see the same. Our perceptions are different. Then the language of the knowledge enables you to stay before someone who's very different to you, and then to learn from them.
Yeah.
And to engage with them in such a way that you get to fulfill that need that we all have, quality human connection. And that's what makes us feel really safe.
Yeah.
And then this brain can learn.
Yeah.
You said earlier, that growth is so sweet. Growth is like a syrup. It's wonderful, and it creates an energy, in your human that provokes you to interact with your environment in that positive, open, kind of enthusiastic manner. And in this space, a lot is possible.
Yeah, and that's got to be the base of neuroplasticity itself, surely, that actually being open to learning beyond the story that you tell yourself, beyond your perception of reality, and allowing that perception to actually be shifted with the ever shifting of your experiences, of understanding that your reality is not your mother's reality or your friend's reality, no matter how close you are in that relationship, that if your experiences create your reality and your beliefs, that every single person's perception of the world is going to be completely different and often conflicting, even if you have a great love for that person, that when something can be so conflicting, to not see that as a threat but as an opportunity.
And we also have to remember, Georgie, that that there is plasticity in the negative, i.e., let's review now the whole social dilemma and the way that we've become highly reactive and we've become foreign of information. And so we're always, notifications, responding to text, how many emails. So that generates a lot of stress in the nervous system. But guess what? We're learning that. And if that's what you're doing for most of the time, you're harnessing the plasticity of your brain to make involuntary stress responses, or stress or anxiety or nervousness or tension.
Yeah.
So it's important to remember that the plasticity of the brain can be used in a positive way and also in a negative way, and to be aware of that. Is this response, is this thought process stressing me, or is it making me feel relaxed and open? Do I feel more constricted, or do I feel open and willing and inspired to learn? And the two states, of course, are very different.
Yeah. And I mean, work like this has to be of the utmost importance, surely, with how much social media is growing by the second at the moment, especially with young people. We are chained to our phones. I'll never forget that picture you sent me of someone actually handcuffed to their own phone, which is so incredibly relevant because it's true.
Can I add this important point?
Yeah.
So we respond to our environment in two ways. Is it a threat or is it a reward?
Right.
Right. So the threat is more important than the reward. Why? Because number one, we have to survive, and we still have that kind of brain.
Yeah.
So the way that I've changed the way that I use social media and my phone is I see my phone as a threat now, not as a reward. It's a threat to my consciousness. It's a threat to my sanity. It's a threat to the quality of my work. It's a threat to the quality of my relationships. Yeah. So the way that I do it now is I don't have any notifications on. I don't want to be Pavlov's dog, because people are going to their phones even when they're not ringing or pinging. They're taking them to the bathroom first thing in the morning, last night, during the night. And so, it's become the master. Well, for me, it's a threat to my consciousness. It's a threat to my immune system. It's a threat to my healthy sleep patterns. It's a threat to the quality of my work. It's a threat to the quality of the way that my brain works. So I think we can change our perception of that phone from reward system. It's a threat. It's a threat to the quality of my life.
Yeah.
But another thing that I say, because we're not designed to multitask or to switch tasks, and that creates stress in the nervous system, and it also undermines the processing power of the brain, i.e. its cognitive performance, i.e. remembering, problem solving, insight, planning, organizing. So now I say, one thing at a time, one thought at a time, one person at a time, one conversation at a time, one project at a time, So once we shift to that kind of movement, so for example, if I'm doing my room in the morning and the voice says, oh, there's something in the bathroom you need to attend to, I say, no, I'm doing this. When I finish this, I'll attend to that. Yeah. So it involves a process of identifying, internally, no, that's a distraction. I'm not going there. No, that's a distraction. No, this is an interruption. I'm going to stay. I'm going to sit here and read this book for a full hour, and I won't get up to make myself a cup of tea or to check my email or change what I'm wearing. Or so we can begin to say, no, i.e. 27 Blue, not interested.
Yeah. I will not allow that notification to pull me away from what I am investing my energy into.
Yes. So my phone won't switch on until 7 a.m. in the morning, and it'll switch off at 10 p.m. at night. No notifications. Also, I already have 30 minutes of social media a day, then it switches off.
Yeah.
And try that for 10 days and see how you feel.
Yeah.
See how you feel. It's different.
It's revolutionized my days. Only for the last 2-3 weeks now, I've switched off pretty much all of my notifications, apart from, I think, my perhaps my main phone or something, but any notifications which are pingy or unnecessary and not adding value to my day. And it has made such a difference because I can focus. And actually, again, something else that I even now feel uncomfortable to admit, but that it is like an addiction. It
is the addiction.
Gratification to connect, especially now, my goodness, when we are so isolated, to connection, to that someone has texted me, and so I am connected to someone or something. But are you really? Because actually what you're looking at is a screen. You are not having a moment of value really with that person, with a what you up to. Eating a sandwich, is there something better you could have done with that 15 minutes? Most likely, yes.
There's lots that we can do. For example, we've learned to fill in the space. So if we're watching a movie, we'll have a little bit of texting as well. or share the movie
Oh my
with someone
God.
else, right?
People at restaurants, right? On their
Yes.
phones.
Or you're in the queue and you can't stand to be in the queue, even though there's two people ahead of you, and you pick up the phone to check in.
Yeah.
So what we're doing is, in essence, we're kind of checking out of consciousness. We're foraging for more connection, foraging for information, for distraction, so that we can feel okay in this moment. But hang on a second, why would I not be okay just standing in my own company in a queue with myself?
Yeah.
Why is that so uncomfortable? And if it is, then Houston, we have a problem.
Yeah.
We have a problem here, because that means what, I can't stand my own company.
We're living a life of
I'm
avoidance.
not used to my own company. I'm
Right.
so used to filling my company with other things, information, people, distractions, that to be in a queue for a minute is unbearable. So I have to reach for the phone.
Wow.
I think, I confess to that.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Do you think it's also something, especially with us both definitely confessing to having a stage of definitely being adrenaline junkies, that the phone is a sense of keeping up in such a fast-paced Western world, that it's a sense of that if I put my phone down for a whole day, I'm not going to know what's going on, and I'm going to be behind. The world is going so fast now, and everyone, capitalism, right? Growth, again, more.
Yeah. I can't miss out.
I've got to keep up. I can't, the fear of missing out. Exactly. That if I'm not, and this definitely, of course, came in with my journey as well, especially in terms of, we talked a lot about relationship, because that was a huge part of my growth, but keeping up, and that was a big part of the phone. If I don't keep up with the conversation or engage some more, which was actually not serving myself or my relationships in any way, then I'm going to miss out, and then it's all going to go away. And then what? And that's massive.
My add to that is, you can't miss out on experiences you've never had. Right. And I'm not thinking about the experiences that I've never had at the age of 54.
No.
It's, the other thing is that if you're under 24 or 25, you will have the fear of missing out, because Mother Nature wants you to go out there and explore and to experience and to feel and to do and to make mistakes and to learn from them. And that's kind of where you're at. So, you came to me, you had some stuff. I call it stuff.
A lot of stuff.
I still have stuff. Right. Stuff. If you stop having stuff, then we might be sitting on the couch becoming a potato.
Yeah.
And with reruns of whatever we watch, Game of Thrones, or whatever it is that we're into. But we're not. We're designed for learning, for growing, for experience, and that's what makes life feel rich.
Yeah. But I think by using these tools, and for anyone listening that hears Anastasia say 34 blue or something, Anastasia's referring to the cards that she gives to everyone, the incredible cards that, if you're watching the video, that are behind her. Yes.
So they're the adult knowledge for adults, anyone kind of over 13. And then this is the rainbow knowledge for young children. Yeah. And they're the same ideas, but taught in a more simple, easy language.
Yeah.
That's what we're referring to. And of course, I would have to know them off by heart.
Yeah. And, I think all of this incredible stuff, similar, at the start of this podcast, I'll always say that I hope to inspire people to use the power of their breath to harness their bodies and minds for a better quality of life. I don't like using the word take control, because there's a certain image of gripping and clinging with the word control, but harnessing your own experience by using tools like these. And I think your lessons are that on a bigger level, that you don't want to change your experience. There's nothing to fix. There's no problem. But if your experiences create your beliefs and create your reality, then if by even switching off your notifications, something as simple as that, and making those little changes, and changing your perception, which will influence your experience, you can change and harness your entire reality to serve your journey rather than being controlled by everything that randomly comes your way and being swept away in this tsunami of the world. And the world is crazy and full of things that we cannot control. And so having these lessons, I think, yeah, it's an incredible tool to harness your own experience for the better, not control your experience, because that is, we can't, but to harness how you flow through that experience is incredible.
The world has always been crazy, every generation.
Yeah.
Right? So, you know, that's the deal if you're a human. But one of the things that you've heard me say often is whenever at the mercy of the circumstances or the conditions of the external world, we're actually at the mercy of our responses, you know, our emotions, you know, so we're at the mercy of our emotional reactions. And how we respond to what's happening will and does determine how we feel and then how we engage and communicate next. So we're not at the mercy of the environment, we're at the mercy of our responses and our thoughts and our emotions that dictate how we engage and how we interact.
Yeah. And it changes everything in terms of I haven't stopped working out or going for long bike rides or long runs, but my intention when going for that run or that bike ride is completely different, rather than I need to do this because if I don't, I will not be good enough for this world, which is, that's a survival instinct almost, you know, as if feeling as if I can't breathe unless I do these things. Whereas now it will be, I just love connecting with nature and it's sunny. And so I want to jump on my bike and go and explore that and be curious. And I don't know how far I'm going to go today or where I'm going to go, but I know that I love that feeling of being in the fresh air and, you know, riding through a beautiful array of countryside. And that makes for a completely different experience, even though I'm doing the same thing. And I think that is a lesson that's valuable to every parameter of life, surely. Yeah, massively. Finishing up, what would be your key pieces of advice for anyone who is on the fence about personal growth, about investing in themselves, perhaps in terms of a therapist and wherever you are financially, you know, however small that investment may be, but even just an investment of time. It can be quite overwhelming, I think, when people approach the subject of self-care and personal growth, and especially in terms of breathing. You only Google the word breathing and you get a million different modalities, and a lot of people then walk away because they say, I don't even know where to start. So I think that is an important piece of advice. So what would you say to someone who's sitting on the fence to, I know I've got some stuff, we all have, I know I need to change something, I'm not happy with where I am. Where do you start?
When I was in my early 20s, I really got into something called NLP. And I was curious, neuro-linguistic programming.
Right.
It's no longer for me. It hasn't been for me for a long time. But at the age of 21, it resonated and I liked it. Now that I'm explored so many other areas, it no longer resonates with me, but I can't condemn its merit to people who find interest in it.
Right.
And so I think that at whatever age you are, you will, you know, as long as you get up and you move in a direction and have a willingness and a desire to grow and learn. And I think we all have that. At some point, you will find a person or a friend or a lover or a boyfriend or an enemy, maybe, someone who you clash with, or a teacher or a therapist or a practitioner or some information or some YouTube video of someone. And what they say will resonate with you. And if it resonates and it makes you feel nice. Now, let's make the comparison of, you know, and I'm really not very much into conspiracy theorists.
Right.
Right. And why? Because when I engage with people who have pretty far right views of anything, what you tend to see is stress,
And
right?
fear.
And that's the kind of, and fear, and that stress and that fear really impacts the nervous system in such a way that it really does create filters of perception. So the advice is, when you hear something or you meet someone and it instills a sense of, resonates calmness and tranquility, and it seems to offer something that could be of benefit positively, to yourself or to others, you've got to go in that direction. You've got to explore it, and engage with that and see what it does for you. Yeah. And then you become your own scientist. Is this good for me? Does it work? Do I sleep better? Do I engage better? Do I feel more connected? Do I feel more calm? Or does this stress me out more? So I think we find what's right for us at different stages of our journey. For me, in the 30s, it was Zen, it was Buddhism. It still is Zen and Buddhism. In my 40s, it was science. I guess in my 50s, it's kind of a return to Zen with bits of science as well. But again, and some part, you might experience something and it's no longer relevant, as NLP is no longer relevant for me, but it's relevant to others. So it's about what feels right and what sounds good for you at that time. But there are lots of free things like, you don't have to pay to meditate. You don't have to pay to go for a run. You don't have to pay to access parts of the internet that offer you time with practitioners or therapists who are sharing what they do, with many others. So search, be inquisitive, be curious. If it's working for you, great. If it doesn't resonate, next.
It sounds like the whole sort of overarching theme of our entire conversation, and perhaps the key to emotional intelligence, as is actually the key to any breath work and mindfulness practice, is awareness, which is also free. Which of course is a card. Awareness is empowering, but that awareness, I think it's come up in this conversation time and time again, putting out there, doing whatever you're putting your energy into, but then stepping back, pausing, and just observing. Which is why, of course, we observe the breath, because every emotional state has a breathing pattern. If you can observe the breath, you can understand where you are, and then you understand where you need to go or where you want to go. And so having that awareness in this sense of any sort of personal growth, forget listening to your breathing, but just listening in general, is perhaps the biggest tool that there is. And the last thing that I'd like to add, which I can't believe we haven't brought up yet, and will, I think, perhaps have to be part 2, where I'm going to have to bring you back on the podcast in a while or something for part 2, because we've probably covered about 5% of what we could have spoken about, but is the phrase less is more, and the importance of that to finish up on.
Which is what when you walked into the office, this space, it was on my fridge. Less is more. Yes, less is more, because again, it goes back to my idea of one thought at a time, one person at a time, one relationship at a time, one conversation at a time. Less is more. This capitalism depends on us wanting more, on us being needy, on us wanting to find something outside of ourselves, whether it be a cream that makes you look younger, or the perfect tights, or the perfect shoes, or the great bag, to make us feel more complete by sourcing something outside of ourselves. Then it becomes, the brain will harness its plasticity to become addicted to having more. Right, and then you want more and more and more. So there's less pleasure in a plethora of things that are before you. So less is more is reflects also my lack of minimalism. But I apply it to the way that I like to live. Less is more.
Less is more. Yeah, I had to bring that up because it was such an important.
I have plenty. I like to say I have plenty. I have plenty.
Yeah. It was such an important part of I know our journey working together, and so I had to bring it up. And you know, obviously I said before, I did not plan this conversation whatsoever, because I just knew from sort of free flowing with you that some incredible insights would come out, as they always do in a session. Before we finish up, where can people find you?
Oh, yes. There is an Instagram page, superablemind.com.
Yep.
There is the website, www.superablemind.com.
Yeah.
And yeah, feel free to message me on Instagram. I've worked with all sorts of people with different kind of conditions, different occupations, you know, stress, anxiety, depression, anorexia, bulimia, self-harm, all sorts of situations and experiences. So yeah, contact me on Instagram or through Georgie, or message me, and we can have a chat.
Yeah, and families and couples too, right? You don't just do one.
Families, relationship counseling, and children, parents. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, as expected, it has been just uplifting and insightful and wonderful to talk to you. So thank you.
Georgie, it's always nice to see you. I miss, having you walk in here and playing Staffy.
I know. That's Anastasia's dog, by the way, for anyone listening, who is absolutely incredible and wonderful. But yeah, as always, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Georgie. Bye.